Hi, it's Penny, and in this video I wanted to check back in on my 2023 anticipated releases and see whether I actually read them, and if I did read them, were they actually like everything that I'd hoped for? So firstly, let's talk about the ones that I haven't read. We have For the First Time Again by Sylvain Neuvel. This is actually the third book in a series that I was hoping to get to in 2023, primarily because I was very over-optimistic about being able to get to Series 0 and being caught up on all the series and being able to start new series. But because I did not get to that stage, that meant I wasn't starting any new series, or mostly I wasn't. So I didn't start this series, so of course I didn't get to book number 3. Then we had Monstrous Volume 8 by Marjorie Liu and Sana Takeda. This is a series that I really love, and I wish I had read Volume 8. The only problem is, I can't afford to buy new graphic novels. They're way too expensive, so I'm waiting on my library to get this, and it still doesn't have it. I'm still hopeful it's going to get it, so I'm waiting somewhat impatiently. Then as well, some of my anticipated releases were not released. There's 4 that I always mention that I pretty much knew weren't going to be released, so let's not even talk about those ones. Then as well, we have Losing Gravity by Cameron Hurley. I think now it's saying 2025, although I haven't actually seen any proper official update of what's happening there, so who knows when we'll get that one. And then there was also The Mirrored Heavens by Rebecca Roanhorse, the third and final book in the Beneath Earth and Sky trilogy, which is coming out in April this year, so it got shuffled back a little bit. So that's all the books that I didn't read. Not that bad, given that I did have 23 books on my anticipated releases. Of course, there were those 4 I knew I would never get to, but really there's just a couple that I could have gotten to, but I didn't. And really, I think I had a good reason for not getting to them. Okay, now let's talk about all the ones that I did read. Firstly, we had 9 Lives by Maureen Johnson, which was technically released in 2022, so it was the 27th of December 2022. I decided, the chances of me getting to a new release at the end of the year, impossible, so I just counted it as a 2023 release. And I did get to this one, and I really enjoyed it. So 9 Lives is part of the Truly Devious YA mystery series. I think it was the 5th book, but we basically follow Stevie Bell, who is this teen prodigy who loves solving murder mysteries. The first 3 books are kind of a trilogy dealing with one bigger mystery, and then there's another book where she's at a summer camp, and in 9 Lives she goes to the UK to visit her boyfriend and solves this kind of cold case where this drunk group of friends were playing hide and seek, and then one or more. It's been a while since I read this, but some of them turn up dead, and Stevie Bell solves it. So this one I gave 4 stars. I just always enjoy spending time with Stevie Bell. The audiobooks are really good, and I enjoy the way that the mysteries come together. I will say 9 Lives had a cliffhanger, and there's still no word on when we're getting the next book, so that's very frustrating. Then we got Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo, which is the 2nd book in the Alex Stern series. The Alex Stern series follows Alex Stern, who is this woman who's able to see ghosts, and because of that ability gets a position at, I never remember what university it is. This time I'm going to guess Yale. Basically some big prestigious university, and she gets a job monitoring the different magical clubs or houses at the university. This one I only gave 3 stars because it wasn't really my favorite. I think a lot of the things I loved from the first book didn't carry through into that 2nd book. And I didn't really like the pacing. It felt like a lot of times very serious things were happening, and instead they were focusing on nonsense that didn't matter, and executing on plans that they hadn't actually made the plans of. Anyway, somewhat frustrating, but I still like the overall vibe, and I'm interested to see where the next book will go. I think it's the last book in the series now, but we also don't know when we're getting that one. Then we got Lost in the Moment and Found by Shonen Maguire. This is the 8th book in the Wayward Children series. The Wayward Children series, if you don't know, is one where children find these magical doors through to magical worlds, and then every 2nd book is them finding a magical world, and every other book is them going on a quest into a magical world. And the home for wayward children that all these children kind of meet at is a place where all these children that have been to magical worlds and then found themselves back in the real world can go and kind of find a bunch of people with a similar experience. This has been kind of a conflicting series for me. There's been books I've really loved, books that were kind of meh. Unfortunately, book 8 was one I just didn't really like. I felt very disappointed in it. I think that's an unpopular opinion because most people I've seen who've read it have absolutely loved it. But honestly, I just didn't think it dealt with the themes that it addresses that well. But again, I've seen lots of people who think differently than that, so I don't know, I guess just not for me. Okay, then we have Magic Tides by Ilona Andrews, and I'm going to include with this Magic Claims, also by Ilona Andrews. Both of these were short little novellas that came out in the Kate Daniels world, where we follow this mercenary, Kate Daniels, in this world where magic has started to come back into the world, but it comes back in waves, so sometimes magic will work and other times technology will work, but never both at the same time. So the original series is a 10-book series. I really loved it. It's just over my shoulder there. But in 2023, we got a couple of novellas kind of set as Kate and her love interest are trying to settle down into family life. It doesn't go to plan, and in each of these books, they're kind of trying to help some people deal with a different kind of magical threat. I really love both of these. I gave the first one 4.5 stars and the next one 5 stars, but also like you should 100% not be picking these up if you haven't read main Kate Daniels series, and if you've read that, you'll probably have a good idea whether you'd enjoy these little novellas as well or not. But I like them. Then we got Assassin of Reality by Marina and Sergei Dyachenko. So this is the sequel to Vita Nostra, which was a 5-star read for me. I can see that I've put 5 stars for Assassin of Reality, but to be honest, it wasn't quite as good as Vita Nostra. We're following this young girl, Sasha, as she goes on holiday with her mum, where she meets this man who starts giving her these weird tasks. And when she completes these tasks, she gets rewarded and eventually earns her place at this Institute of Special Technologies, where the lessons are all really strange, and it is kind of an overhanging threat that if they don't do well, then their loved ones will be in danger. But also, like, it's really weird and abstract, just like a really bizarre story. Assassin of Reality was slightly less strange than Vita Nostra. It just felt a lot more concrete. It's also a big focus on a romance that I didn't really enjoy, but still, some of the concepts are amazing. Like, just the stuff they're learning doesn't make any sense, but it's one of these ones where it manages to build on itself to the point where it's saying things that don't make sense, but because of the foundation it's given you, it almost does make sense. It's not going to be for everyone, but that is the kind of book that I love. Then we got Tombs by Junji Ito. So this is a horror manga short story collection, and I really like these ones. I think this is my favorite Junji Ito short story collection. My favorite Junji Ito still remains as Uzumaki, but in terms of short story collections, Tombs was really good. There were so many stories that even, like, I read this quite a while ago now, but thinking back, there are certain stories that are still sticking out in my mind as like just so creepy and awful and just cringy and yuck, but I loved it, which is why I gave it 4.5 stars. Then we got A Sleight of Shadows by Kat Howard. So this is the sequel to An Unkindness of Magicians, basically where there are these different magical houses in this underground magical society. And in the first book, there was like a magical tournament to decide which house would be the leader of this magical underground world. And we were mainly following this young girl named Sydney, who was a competitor in the competition, who was trying to kind of turn the power structures on its head and change the way that magic worked. So in A Sleight of Shadows, we're still following Sydney as she kind of tries to keep things that she's achieved in the first book, kind of keep them moving, as well as investigating a bit of a murder mystery. We learn a lot more about the magic. I will say, this is another sequel where I don't think it was quite as good as the first book, but I still did really like it. I liked the way it addressed certain themes, and I just want more of that world and of those characters. So I gave A Sleight of Shadows 4 stars. I did enjoy it. Then we got The Grimoire of Grave Fates. So this was a short story anthology where it's all kind of one story set at this magical school. And each chapter follows a different student, but they're all connected in that there is a murder at the school at the very beginning, and each story is set in a different hour as the students go through and try and figure out what's happened. So I liked the idea of this. I will say I gave it 3.5 stars, which is not bad, but it was somewhat frustrating because each chapter would introduce a new character and like a new magic. Like all these students kind of from different diverse cultures, and those cultures really inform the magic that they have. And so many chapters would introduce really interesting characters and really interesting magic, and then that's it, just one chapter, that's all you got. And a few of the authors managed to kind of make their chapter be a story in itself, as well as doing the bigger thing that it needed to do, but most of them didn't, and mostly I was left again just wanting more of all these characters that had been created. Then we got One of Us Is Back by Karen M. McManus. This is the third book in the, I guess it's the One of Us trilogy. So in the first book, One of Us Is Lying, we have basically a group of teenagers in detention, and by the end of detention, one of them is dead, and then all the other students who are in detention are under suspicion, and we learn a lot of their secrets as people look into could they be the murderer. Then the second book kind of followed their younger siblings, and then in the third book we have the person who was guilty, or one of the people who was guilty in the first book, has kind of come back to town, and then some people start going missing, and again there's a lot of suspicion going on. I just really like the friend group that builds up through the series, and even though I often don't like reading like teen books, contemporary teen books, I found these ones just quite relatable. I liked that even though this series is like a YA thriller series, and in a lot of adult thrillers, the main characters are often really unlikable, but these guys, I thought they were all really likable, and I just enjoyed hanging out with them. Okay, now I can see we're going to get up to some where I didn't really like them. So mostly, so far, I thought most of those, even if they didn't quite live up to everything I'd hoped, they were still satisfying reads. There were a couple there that were 3 stars that were disappointing, but maybe I had my suspicions they might be up front. But then we had Threads of Power by V. Schwab, and this I only gave 2 stars, mainly because the marketing was off, in my opinion. This was sold as a spin-off to the Darker Shades of Magic series, where we have these 4 different Londons, each with varying degrees of magical power, and we follow some characters who are able to shift between the different Londons. I did really like that first trilogy, and then the spin-off came along and spent the first half at least mainly just going into the backstory of the original characters and what they've done in the 7 years between that original series and this new series. There were some new characters introduced, and their stories seemed really interesting, but we didn't really get them. And nothing that other characters had done in that 7 years was interesting to me at all. And there was some interesting things set up. Nothing was done with them. I was very frustrated the whole time. It did not need to be 500 pages. It was a waste of my time. Okay, then we got Defiant by Brandon Sanderson. So this was the 4th and final book in the Skyward series, Cytonic series. Basically, in this world, we have humans trapped on this planet. Anytime they try to leave, the aliens shoot them down, so the humans live underground. And mainly we're following Spencer, whose father was a fighter pilot, but then he ran away in the middle of a battle, and so her family is quite disgraced and not respected because of that. So in the beginning of the series, Spencer really wants to become a fighter pilot, kind of earn her place. There's a group of friends that she kind of makes while she's training. There's all sorts of cool science fiction stuff going on. I say cool, it started out cool. There is some ideas in there that I really like. There's also some really weird aliens. Like, it's quite silly. And even though it's YA, I don't think it needed to be that silly. Kind of like it's targeted at a younger age range than I initially thought from the first book. I really love the first book. Second book a little bit less. The third book I hated. The 4th book I was worried, but I thought one more book, we may as well try it. And there was some novellas between those other books that I did really like, but the 4th book, like, it was fine. 3 stars? No, 2.5 stars. It was fine. I can see how other people would like it, but I didn't like it. I feel like everything that was good in that series, that was set up in that series, was not delivered on for me. Okay, then lastly, we had the Brandon Sanderson Secret Project books. I got the special editions of all of these, and I do think they are quite lovely. Some really lovely interior art. But what about the books? Tress of the Emerald Sea, I gave 3.5 stars. I found the pacing a bit hard to get through. I don't really like Hoyd, who was a big part of this, but a lot of parts of this were really whimsical and beautiful, and like the magic system was really cool, and the links into the bigger cosmere were interesting. Like, Pros and cons, but overall I was satisfied with this one. Lived up to my hopes. Then we got The Frugal Wizard's Handbook for Surviving Medieval England. This one I was really disappointed in. It looks like I gave it 2.5 stars. Is that generous? Probably. I think in the beginning I was enjoying the humor, and then as I got through it, I appreciated it less and less. Oh, and as well, it has that thing where you've got a main character who doesn't have any memories, and then conveniently throughout the story, whenever it's convenient to the plot, they remember things, and I hate that. But then things improved. We got Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. This one, I mean, the art in this one is beautiful. Absolutely stunning. And the story was beautiful. This one I really enjoyed. I realize I'm not telling you what any of these ones are about, but honestly, if you want to know, you probably know by now, because everyone's been talking about these books all of last year. Anyway, Yumi, I think now, was my favorite. Definitely my favorite. Then lastly, we got The Sunlit Man. I gave this one 3 stars. Like, it was fine, but it really had a bit too much action for me, and kind of had like a Western vibe in some ways that I didn't like. Oh, and I think it kind of introduces like a new world and some interesting characters, but we don't get any of the interesting characters' perspectives. Actually, that's not true. We do, right at the end. I would have wanted it for the whole thing, because kind of the main Cosmic character whose perspective we're getting, I didn't find it that interesting. I wanted someone who was more connected with the world that we were being introduced to. 3.5 stars. I still think it was, it was good. Probably lived up to my expectations, but not a favorite. So I did make a graph of the distribution of the ratings that I gave for my anticipated releases. You can see a couple that I didn't really like, a little bit of a peak of books that were kind of just okay, fine, 3 stars. A few that I thought were like solidly good, even if they weren't my favorites, and then quite a few though that were my favorites. I also, since I was doing some analysis, had a look at the difference between the average rating for my anticipated releases and the average rating for all the books I read during the year. So my average rating for the year was 3.34, and then my average rating for my anticipated releases was 3.66. So maybe that's not like massively different, but I think it's significantly different. I didn't do the actual statistics significant test, but I think it's different enough when you consider we're talking about averages of ratings between like 2 and 5 stars, because 1 star is very rare for me. So from that perspective, I think we can say on average my anticipated releases did meet my expectations, possibly not exceed them, but is that even possible? Probably not. Anyway, let me know how well you did at getting to your anticipated releases of 2023 and whether they lived up to your expectations. And do subscribe if you'd like to see more of my bookish videos. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are doing well, and I will see you next time.